I got it! When I first heard about Dave being trapped in a maze...
1, 2, 3, 4!
I built a labyrinth. Can you believe it?
Dave is trapped in a cardboard maze in his living room and he can't get out.
Welcome to Dave Made a Minute, the podcast where a whole bunch of us are exploring the film Dave Made a Maze 1 minute at a time. The twist. Many of the participants have never seen the film. Some don't even know what film they're sampling. They get their minutes and they tackle them as they see fit. Here's your host from the Groundhog Day Project and Michael Myers Minute, Robert Black.
Minute 77, we have some unexpected survivors, and the animated closing title sequence begins. To tackle Minute 77, we have me, Robert Black of Michael Myers Minute, along with Sean German of Groundhog Minute.
You come home, there's a giant maze in your living room. You're like, what the... There's a giant maze in my living room. I've heard of people rearranging their furniture, but this is wackadoodle crazy. Give me a sense of that.
This doesn't make any sense.
Is that a problem? Did you promise to myself? But solutions, no problem.
It's like a fucking cocktail party in here.
I get a few words from you before you go.
All right. Well, let me go my local, I'll do a local backup here with the Audacity.
I suppose I should do that too.
All right. We should say, well, how you doing, Robert? We should say hello
Good.
Before we jump into the other stuff.
How are you?
Good. Well, you're getting real close to the end of this.
Yeah.
This sucker. All right. This has been a very interesting podcast to listen to. and I want to say very well produced. One of the better put together podcasts, I'd say, of these movie by minutes thing. And not to slight any of the others, but yeah, it's been a joy to listen, and certainly a joy to participate as well. Makes it even better.
Good. Yeah, when it first started, I was mostly listening along with everyone else. I would make sure the recordings I got worked, listen long enough to get an interesting line to use as a title, and then just insert them into the Audacity project file. And so I would listen when they went up, which was kind of fun because I didn't even know the content of my own show for a little while until it was out there. So I'm like, I don't know what people are saying, but people are going to hear it.
Yeah.
I stopped doing that once, what was it, in about episode 40? Because then I started deliberately getting more involved. Then it got fun. Then it took up much more of my time.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, I wonder if, think about it, because I think at some point the beginning and end, the opening and closing were always well done from the beginning, yes. From minute one. But then at some point you started inserting, I assume it was you and not the individual host.
That was then, yeah. That's what I'm talking about around minute 40.
Yes, stuff started popping up. Little quotes from, and scenes and stuff from other movies you'd stick in.
Yeah.
And, yeah. All right. Because you're actually paying attention.
Uh-huh. Well, and there's more to it than that, but I don't want to say yet.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah, don't spoil the surprise. I'm sure there's much more to come.
Well, there's not much more of that to come, but there's a reason I started doing that and did it more as it went. And no one said anything about it yet, so I'm saving it.
Okay.
So you want to tell the listeners what happens in minute 77?
Sure. Well, in minute 77 of Dave Made a Maze, we see a Minotaur rising, not quite from the ashes, phoenix-like, but rising from the discarded refuse of a cardboard maze as an origami bird flies off. Yep. The Minotaur starts to walk away from us, flashes us the three finger, the pinky pointer thumb, I love you sign, and roll credits.
Yep.
And that's minute 77 in a nutshell.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's more to the credits because just like the opening credits, there are animated stuff under the beginning of this. But yeah, that's all that we get.
Yeah. Just like the opening credits, it's animated. There's some stuff going on, and there's some music with some lyrics that may or may not pertain to what we've just seen.
Yeah. And also, if you like the design of the Minotaur, I think this is the best we get to see it when he's outside.
Oh, yes. And we should say for if any of the listeners to the podcast are just listening to the podcast
jump
haven't
in on
seen the movie yet, at minute 77, it's daylight.
Yep.
So, yeah, we get a good look, maybe our only good look at this Minotaur outside walking down the street. And this is a guy who's, and he's been talked about, the actor who's playing the Minotaur.
Yep. John Hennigan.
In much better shape than I have ever been.
Oh, he's a wrestler.
Yeah.
And of course, his head is made of cardboard. He has a blue towel as a cape.
Yeah. But a ring in his nose?
Yeah. Metal ring.
But a large metal ring.
Yeah, like
it's not cardboard.
Nope.
It looks definite metallic. And the towel for a cape, and that is also not cardboard.
Right.
But yeah, the head and the horns and the bird. And and this, and I instantly thought of the line from Better Off Dead. That's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good Minotaur like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Man, now that's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good white boy like that.
It's okay. He gets out. What they threw away is the cardboard Bryn. I think now all that remains of her is the top half of her head.
Yeah.
Which the director still has.
That's an interesting thing to say. I've heard of directors and actors kind of saving mementos.
He has the top of her
serial
head.
killer saving things from a set. Like, I'm going to save the head of Bryn.
Well, he has the entire Minotaur head. I got to wear it.
Really?
Yeah. It's surprisingly heavy and really hard to see out of.
I imagine.
Like, there's little gaps all over, but not in front of you. So it's hard to see.
But not where your eyes
right,
are.
It's hard to see what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm. I'd be wearing that thing every Halloween. That's great.
Yeah, it's got a little damage on the left side of the face, but otherwise it is intact pretty well, and it's sturdy. There's a lot of layers to it, especially the horns to make them stick out like that.
Yeah, I don't have too much specifically on this minute, but I'm glad you asked me to come back.
Yeah.
My name's Sean, by the way. I suppose I should probably introduce myself.
I will have introduced you in the intro. It's fine.
Okay. Not that it really matters, but I did want to come back and say a few things and really kind of rebut something I said just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
That I realized was, the listener can decide whether I was right then or right now or wrong altogether. But I'd said that the lesson of the movie or the moral of the movie is sort of don't try. We start with this slacker Dave who has a lot of different hobbies and different things he's kind of trying during the opening credits and seems like never really finishes anything. And then here's a maze, like he did it. He built a maze because he wanted to build a maze, and then he finished it. And Bryn's dead, among others. People died. This was a disaster. Like, he should not have tried, because trying is disappointment, which is what I said a few minutes ago. But that's, I think that's wrong. I think the true lesson is you just need to be a little bit more careful on what you try. And that occurred to me rewatching the beginning of the movie, and particularly listening to the music that plays over the opening credits.
Diversion by the Equals.
Diversion from the Equals, from their 1971 album Rock Around the Clock, and released as a single in 1973, which I had not heard the song or heard of the group before my exposure to this movie, but they're terribly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a shame. I don't know how I was pretty big very much into 60s music when I was a younger man in the 80s and 90s, but still kind of into it. But I was surprised that I hadn't come across them. They're really quite notable for three things that I found.
Okay.
in particular. One is they're really one source said they may have been the first, but I'll just say one of the few racially integrated pop groups of the mid '60s. So you had
because they got together in like
light-skinned and dark-skinned folks, formed in '65 in London, but you had kind of native Englishmen, and you had some folks from Jamaica and folks from, or at least one guy from elsewhere that I'll mention later. The second thing I thought it was interesting, they're really kind of on the forefront of glam rock, and glam really didn't break through till T-Rex's appearance on Top of the Pops in 1971, and would later kind of a movement that kind of involved outrageous stage productions and costumes and some androgyny of folks like David Bowie. But they were kind of on the forefront, in the mid '60s, where they wear brightly colored costumes, and their lead singer would wear a woman's wig, like a long blonde-haired wig on stage and things like that. And then I also found them notable the mix of styles and influence. And a lot of British rock and pop at the time was influenced by American blues and R&B, but they also mixed in Jamaican ska, which I enjoyed. I'm kind of a fan of ska and reggae and that sort of thing. So diving deeper into their catalog and listening to some of their songs and hearing that ska influence, I enjoyed. And they were actually their songs have been covered by the Clash, Detroit Cobras, and Patu Banton, among others, which I was surprised to hear that I hadn't heard of. But yeah, so that's the Equals from London. And I want to just read some of the lyrics from that song.
Before we get to the lyrics, a more general thing about what you were just saying. Where'd it go? I was scrolling up to find this guy's name and I lost it.
Eddie Grant?
No, it was quoting someone named Stratton, and I'm like, wait, who?
Yeah.
In this article. Because there it is. It said, mainstream white teenagers who bought beat group songs were used to lyrics about girls and love and its complexities. In 1967, they were not used to songs about killing and being chased by the police. The Equals were effectively code switching between two audiences, immigrant rude boys and white pop fans, in the same song, if not the same line.
Yeah. Well, in one of their songs, I probably should have made a note of it. I think the title is Blue-Eyed Black Boy or something like that. It's, the obviously about a mixed race child.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's Blue-Eyed Black Boy is the name of the song. But, so they were, yes, some songs. And as you said, in that quote, sometimes within the song, it's very kind of party rock or party pop.
Right.
And then some of it's very socially conscious as well.
Black Skin, Blue-Eyed Boys, 1970.
Oh, there you go. Black Skin, Blue-Eyed Boy. Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff. I think that's something I'll be, I'll put them into my regular rotation. I'll be listening to more of their work. And then, so one of the founding members, Eddie Grant, and I was kind of just hitting like the Wikipedia article on them, and that name jumped out at me because, of course, people of my age will remember that name from the hit Electric Avenue.
Yep.
From I think like 82 or 83. But so getting back to the diversion, the lyrics, I had a slight diversion, but I'm back. I had a slight diversion, but I'm back. I used to say I loved you. I took a diversion to bring my love back to you now.
Yep.
And that, like, paying more attention to that really changed my thinking that was Dave's mistake. Not finishing. That's not the mistake. The finishing and the commitment to stick with something to the end. Mm-hmm. That's not the mistake. The mistake is what he's decided to finish. And actually something I just doing a quick, some quick rewatching just a few moments ago, something I hadn't noticed previously during the opening credits.
Yeah.
When Annie calls, he doesn't answer.
Nope.
So it's those diversions. It's the detours from the things that are important. That's the mistake. So it's good to have, as Paula Poundstone would say, stick-to-itiveness. You just need to be a little bit more thoughtful than Dave has been in terms of what are you going to stick to. So I think that's the lesson of the movie. That's kind of the moral of the story.
It's interesting in regard to what the rest of the song, we only hear the chorus under the opening credits. The rest of the song, the narrator has gone to jail for the person he loves and now is coming back. So his diversion is going to jail. And I think that's interesting since we don't hear that part of the song because this movie starts with Dave having been lost inside a box no one else can get in. Or they can, but it's dangerous. In order to get to him, he's somewhere else.
Right. He's in a prison of his own making.
Yeah.
But then I wonder, coming back to minute 77, as the closing credits start to roll, we get a different song and we get some different lyrics.
Yep.
Sipping my beer, playing pinball, yeah.
Which repeats several times.
And so now I wonder, has Dave learned anything? Is he back to his slacker ways, sipping a beer, playing pinball?
Well, it depends. Because if you pay attention to the animation, the song, by the way, listeners, is Pinball by Tandemora. We'll get to more of the lyrics in a moment. The animation, the characters who, spoilers, are dead, are in this scene. The Minotaur shows up to a nightclub where all of the characters from the movie are there, including Jane, including Greg, including Bryn, including Leonard.
Our Flemish
cameraman,
tourists make it up.
And Flemish tourists, who all are presumed dead. Well, Jane's dead. The rest are Greg's dead, but the rest are presumed dead. They're all here. You could read this end credits as somehow magically they're all still alive, just like the Minotaur is. And so, they're taking a break, sipping their beer, playing pinball. Or maybe Dave didn't learn anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
We do get more than the chorus of this song, though. We get a few lyrics from it. I didn't come here for political. I came here for rock and roll. You can have your little cynical. Don't need those troubles.
So maybe the mistake that Dave is making in the beginning is he's diverted himself. As I said earlier, when the call from Anne comes in, or Annie comes in during the opening credits, he doesn't answer. Right. And we see him, he's painting, he's woodworking, he's watching his ant farm.
He's making birds.
But he's doing all these things alone in his apartment, and eventually builds this cardboard maze alone. Whereas the rescue or the escape at the end, it's a group effort. It's with his friends. Yeah.
And we saw in minute, I think it's 41, 42, that in college or whenever, Harry, Gordon, Annie, and Dave, and maybe a couple of the others, maybe Leonard, made a movie together. So they've done creative efforts together before. But he's doing these ones by himself. Maybe that's the problem. Not that he doesn't, that he's putting his effort into creative things, because the movie is clearly not against that. But that he's choosing that over everything else. He's choosing that over Annie. He didn't answer her call.
Right.
He's choosing that over his friends. He made stuff in the maze for Gordon. But was he going to invite Gordon in there? I don't know.
Right.
By the time he made a giant vagina that eats things, I think he understood this place was dangerous.
Yeah. But during this closing credit sequence, he said it's everyone's, well, not everyone, but a lot of the characters we've seen are all together in this club. Well, and it's Dave and Annie.
Through the 3 minutes of this animation, all of them are there. In this minute, we don't get all of them yet.
Right. Eventually they will. Yeah. Spoiler alert. They'll all be there. So maybe, so maybe that's the takeaway. It's not work versus play or so on. It's solitary versus letting the people in your life in. Letting them into your maze.
Which goes to the lyrics that are not, they're in, where are we? Minute 79 lyrics for this song. You are not alone in the city. We are all alone in the city. And that repeats a few times.
Yeah, I want to quote something I read on the internet recently. And someone who had seen this movie said, this is a quote, "The ultimate point, of course, is that it doesn't matter. Whether he built it, whether it built itself, whether other people built it, by chance or by circumstance, by choice or not, the end is still the same. Life ends in death. The labyrinth is still a lonely place without friends. It's simple, it's profound, it's absurd, it's stupid."
Yeah.
And Robert would, of course, recognize that quote since he's the one who wrote it on his wonderful Groundhog Day Project blog, where he occasionally wrote about movies other than Groundhog Day. But writing about this movie,
and that was just barely a year ago.
Barely a year ago. But the labyrinth is still a lonely place without friends, and I don't think I understood, and this was just a few days ago when I read that and made a note of it, but I think I understand it more now than I did then.
I understand it too well sometimes, but I don't want to bring down minute 77. I've talked about stuff like that in earlier minutes. Like, I've dealt with depression in my life, so I've felt that way a lot. But this kind of thing makes me feel better. Even listening to other people do these things makes me feel better. It's like podcasting, even when you're not the guest or you don't even know the people involved. It's like this weird conversation that I'm in my car driving to work and I'm interacting with the people talking. Even before I was a guest on your show, Groundhog Minute, I started like responding to what you were saying, and then I'd post stuff on Facebook. 'Cause I love these things. I love movies. I love people talking about it.
Yeah, and you've certainly written much about it. You've talked about it. You talked about it a little bit on my show, the Groundhog Minute, with Dave Pallas about movies, and I'm still in the process of wrapping my head around it. It was interesting. Just as we record this, a few days ago, the television program You're the Worst had its season premiere. Yeah. And if you haven't seen it yet, I guess fast forward. There's no way I can do this without spoiling it. But it's the show's about two main characters and their friends, but it's a man and a woman who have been kind of circling each other, and then recently, the last season, they've finally come together as a couple, and I guess they're meeting with a wedding planner or someone, but they're telling their story of how they met, and in a flashback, we see he's a clerk at a video store, and she's someone coming in who's taking selections off of his personal picks on the shelf. And he starts to talk about the importance of movies and the meaningful, how it's meaningful as an art form, how it sort of captures the human experience the way other art forms don't. But I enjoy movies. I read books. I watch television. I go to the theater occasionally, so I see live performances. Listen to a lot of music, so a lot of different art forms that I take in. But movies seem to hold a special place, and I think, I think they do. I only podcast about movies. Yeah. I don't podcast about music or television or theater or any of those other art forms. So, but I still haven't. I don't know why. I can't put it into my personal words what they mean to me. But things like this and listening to the hosts and other people talk, I think helps me along that path to reach the place where hopefully someday I can explain why movies hold the place that they do.
Someday explain succinctly. I think you explain it very well. You just take many episodes, long speeches.
Yeah.
You explain it.
No.
Trying to boil it down to something you can tell someone in one conversation is the hard part.
Right.
If they don't already love it.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's my ethos or what's my motto. Well, there's 100 minutes of Groundhog Day, and I've spent about probably average 35 to 40 minutes talking about each one of those minutes. Yeah. And if you listen to all that, you may get it. So it's not quite an elevator speech.
And if
yet.
not, here's the other show I did about another movie.
And and if not, I talked about Spinal Tap for 83 minutes, and you can talk about that or listen to those. And those probably average closer to 50 minutes.
Wow.
We talked a lot about that movie. Yeah. So the only other thing that I had prepared, or the question I had, and bringing it back to Dave Made a Maze, and back specifically to minute 77, is as the Minotaur walks away from us.
Yeah. Flashes
that sign.
Yeah.
That sort of the hand signal, and it's not the horns.
No.
He's not doing the 2-finger Dio horns heavy metal sign. It's the thumbs out. Yep. So it's the I love you. So the Minotaur loves us.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're all over the place. We're flipping back and forth. But again, going back to those opening credits, I guess Dave is the Minotaur. I mean, the first time we see the Minotaur is during the animated opening section when Dave is, I forget what it was.
It's a wall sconce.
It's a wall sconce.
It's crooked.
But it suddenly, when Dave's standing in front of it, it kind of forms horns on either side of his head, and the animation quickly flashes. Dave's head turns into this Minotaur head. So, the Minotaur / Dave Minotaur.
Speaking of which,
loves us.
Something I only noticed last week while finding screen caps for posting. Like, not even when I was watching the movie, watching the minutes. When Dave cuts down the chrysalis with his sword,
mm-hmm.
in the slow motion shot, one of the little tiny Minotaur heads flies across the screen. And in a single shot, it is directly in front of Dave's head.
Yeah.
And so
oh, wow.
I posted about it on Instagram because I'm like, on the one hand, I imagine it's practical because the scene, they barely used any CGI in this movie. But I'm like, it's so well placed. And I got the impression from Bill Watterson's response on Instagram that was deliberate. It's a CGI thing where they put one of those heads there. Because at that last minute, he is essentially beheading part of himself. And so we get that one more flash of the Minotaur in front of Dave. Just like we got way at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, it's right about, it's at 1:10 and 4 seconds in the movie. It looks practical, but it's almost too good to say the camera's in just the right spot.
It's a little too clear.
The head goes just right in front where it's like right on his shoulders. It's exactly placed in front of his face.
Exactly.
But yeah, just to emphasize, if you haven't gotten the connection that this is, it's not Dave. The Minotaur is not Dave. Dave is not the Minotaur.
No.
But it is some part of him, some aspect of his personality or his being is represented. And I think we all have parts of us we'd like to whack off. That doesn't sound... Well, I mean, we have, bad habits or bad experiences, bad memories, just things about ourselves, things we want to improve. If not necessarily, not necessarily metaphorically kill the way Dave destroys his maze, but yeah, just things about us that we might change if we could, or we're trying to change.
That's kind of the thing I take here with like the I love you sign from the Minotaur is regardless of what you take the Minotaur as like metaphor for like Dave's mental health, mental illness, his creativity, or any negative impulse he might have. In the end, not only did he behead it, it's still alive, it's still out there, but it loves him, it loves us. It's like, yeah, he had to embrace the fact that he has all these friends and not go on his diversions, as we said with the song, but also this bad part of him still exists. He still will have those impulses to have diversions, to get distracted when Annie calls him. He'll still ignore Harry and Gordon, whatever they're doing creatively. And he'll still have part of himself that's bad or sad. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. As long as he recognizes that Gordon and Harry and Annie and Leonard, if he's still alive, still exist. And recognizes that he has negative impulses. And that's okay. Yeah, we, as you say, we have parts we want to whack off, but we can't. Mm-hmm. You can maybe medicate the horribleness to keep it under control, but it's still there. Right. And it always will be.
Well, and those are the things that make us us.
Yeah.
Along with the good things and the things we like and the things we want to emphasize, that they're part of what, make us. And one thing I definitely, I don't get the feeling that aside from, or I guess not aside from, but taking that into consideration, that hand gesture, there's no hint that the Minotaur is like hunting down the people who destroyed his labyrinth. He's not going after Dave and Annie. I get the feeling the Minotaur is, feels that Dave is in a better place now than when they met. Mm-hmm. And now the Minotaur is going on to, there's some other slacker, some other loner, some other struggling artist who needs the assistance or the help of the Minotaur. He's kind of walking off kind of the way at the end of each episode of the old Incredible Hulk television show.
Walking away with the music playing, yeah.
Yeah. Bill Bixby kind of walking down the road.
Which is interesting because in this, the way this is animated, once it turns into the animated Minotaur, we're the Minotaur. Like the horns are sticking up at the corners of the screen, and when he goes for the high five with Bryn, the hand comes from where we'd be if we're him. And so we're walking around as the Minotaur seeing these characters, and the characters are happy to see him. They wave. Bryn goes for a high five. Like, high five. It's a positive, it's a positive thing that the Minotaur is still here at this nightclub where they're all hanging out. I remember in one of the minutes, Alison Grimm had a line where she said, maybe the Minotaur was the friends you made along the way.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little line. Also, the Minotaur is us watching this movie.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't pick up on that, but now we're watching it. Yeah. There's the horns kind of coming in from the peripheral vision, mm-hmm. and all our friends are happy. They're waving at us. They're happy to see us.
So whether they actually died or not, in this moment, they're alive and they're happy to see us. Because however much you get involved in a movie, it's still a movie. It's still a diversion.
Yeah.
And then you come back to your daily life changed by it, however you were changed by it.
Right. Yeah. So I wonder if this is are we just thinking terms of, I know Dave built it's a maze or a labyrinth of cardboard.
Yeah.
But we also, probably the most common cardboard configuration that most of us encounter is the box. Mm-hmm. And that's where most of us will end up at the end, in a box. This seems sort of this end credit sequence kind of makes me think of that a little bit, of just being reunited with, at the end, at the very end, the ultimate end.
Yeah.
Being reunited with all the friends you've made along the way.
Yeah, I didn't like the final episode of Lost, but that makes me think of that. Mm-hmm. Where all those characters that experience this one event together get reunited after they're dead.
Yeah.
No spoilers for Lost.
Yeah. Well, as you said, life ends in death. The labyrinth is still a lonely place without friends.
Yep. And however bad it's going to be, however it's going to end and get to that death, if you have friends along the way, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. This kind of, and it also makes me think of bad dates, and not the Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of bad dates, but like, I can't resist a movie reference. But,
I know.
Just kind of like the, going out and everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
And it's so, it's usually not fun or enjoyable at the time, but it seems those are the best stories to tell. Those are the times that we enjoy the most when they're over. The things that went wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, most people don't want to recount the great stories, the positive stories. They'll give you a little bit of that, but
yeah, those are no fun.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Yeah. I mean, there were some harrowing and worrying moments.
Mm-hmm.
There's some question over who made it out and who didn't from this labyrinth. But I think the folks who did make it out, they're going to be much closer. And they're certainly going to have a great story to tell when they get together.
And I hope it was similar for the podcast. Yeah. I don't think we lost anyone along the way. Actually, that's not true. We did lose someone along the way. That person's fine, but for a little while I lost contact with someone and didn't know what was going to happen with the minutes they had. But I hope that, yeah, people can, not that they're going to like talk about this podcast specifically and everything, but like that it adds something to their experience of their own. I mean, most of the people involved were movies by minute people, so they're used to looking at movies closely. But looking at 1 minute of a movie and trying to work outward is a very different experience. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope it was good.
Well, I like the way it kept going. The mystery, the confusion, that process of the detective work of figuring out where they were.
Yeah.
Every minute we were lost again, versus if you had just done it, said, oh, we're going to do it with people who haven't seen the movie, but it's going to be the same people from minute one straight through.
Yeah, it was so great when episodes like just a few minutes ago in the 70s, there's people who still have no idea what's going on because all they've seen is like minute 5 and minute 12 or whatever. And they still don't know. And I'm like, it's a weird perspective because I know details and have known what people think of those details and where they're wrong and where they're right. And that mystery was still, it was like being, well, I do run like a Dungeons and Dragons game, you know, where people don't know what's going on, but I know everything. It's like that, but they trust you a little bit, you know, because they figure you're not giving them random minutes of like pornography or snuff films. And so they get in and and people had ideas. And when they couldn't figure out anything about the minute, they went on tangents.
Mm-hmm.
And the tangents were generally pretty interesting.
Yeah, I certainly thought so. But yeah, I enjoyed the diversions and the guesses and the times people were close to the mark. But I think I think it was more enjoyable when the further off they got.
Yeah.
The more fun it was.
Talk of aliens at one point.
Well, yeah, there's some confusing moments, particularly towards the end, the last few weeks, where people weren't sure if they were still in the maze or not.
Yeah. You
couldn't tell from the context of the minute.
What's great, though, is that fits the movie. Because they got out of the maze in, minute 40-something. But then they were still in the maze. Because it was expanding. Or it was faking the apartment, whatever it was doing. So it fit.
Yeah, it was kind of a maze within a maze.
Yeah.
Mazeception.
Any other... You didn't have any more specifics thing for 77, right?
No, other than to thank the wonderful coordinator and host of this whole thing, Robert. This has been very enjoyable, very pleasurable to listen to, and to be a part of.
Good.
And thank you for introducing me to this movie. I had no idea. I probably would never have found this if not for this project.
Yeah, I found it because it came up as a recommendation on Amazon Prime. when I was just sitting down to write a blog about a different movie. And instead I wrote about this one, because it got my attention right away. The last bit we get, the Flemish tourists, the male Flemish tourist takes a picture of us, or of the Minotaur, which transitions second 54 to Leonard and Gordon, who hit their beer bottles together, and then Leonard waves to us and the minute ends. And so, Sean, if the listeners want to hear even more of you talking, where can they do so?
Well, I talk a lot, apparently. So you can hear me most recently with my co-host Dave Pallas. We talked about the movie Groundhog Day, 1 minute at a time, and that's at groundhogminute.com. And we're also on, follow us at Groundhog Minute on Twitter, and our Facebook group is Gobbler's Knob. So some listeners hang out there and talk to us. Previous to that, I had a different co-host, Heidi Bennett, and we watched the movie Spinal Tap, or This is Spinal Tap, and we talked about it 1 minute at a time, and that's up at Spinal Tap Minute. And all that stuff, all my podcasts and my guest appearances, my hosting, kind of my mother's site is catandshawn.org, and that's CAT and Sean SEAN.org, and that'll link to all those podcasts, and also I post links to all my guest appearances on other podcasts. So I'll have links to this and other stuff as well. So that's the place to go, catandshawn.org. And if people want to hear more from Robert,
yeah, if listeners want to hear more of me, this show's almost over. My other show, Michael Myers Minute, is going to end in about a month. And, well, at least for original Halloween, I haven't decided yet if I'm going past that. My upcoming thing would be The Room Minute, and I'm going to be doing something that isn't about movies, but about television. Greetings from Wonderfalls, about the short-lived TV show Wonderfalls.
Interesting.
And if you can't remember all of that, you can just go to lemmingdrops.com. Lemming like the little rodent, drops.com.
Thank you for listening.
And then I could probably disarm all the traps, and then we could finish this maze. Who is with me?
That was me, Robert Black of Michael Myers Minute, and Sean German of Groundhog Minute, taking on minute 77 of Dave Made a Maze. Sean has still only mostly escaped this maze. Next time, on Dave Made a Minute, we've got me, Robert Black of the upcoming The Room Minute, taking on minute 78.
Thank you for listening to Dave Made a Minute. Intro dialogue snippets were taken from Dave Made a Maze, directed by Bill Watterson, written by Bill Watterson and Steve Sears, and produced by John Charles Meyer. Intro music is Diversion by The Equals, featured in the film Dave Made a Maze, and Life Cycle of a Match by Parvis Decree. Outro music is Leaving This Godforsaken Place and Her Presence is Strong Here by Parvis Decree. Dave Made a Minute is a production of Lemming Drop Studio and all other featured podcast producers. You can find more content at lemmingdrops.com. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Dave Made a Minute. If you like what you hear, throw us a rating and review on your podcatcher of choice, and check out all of the participants' other shows to spread the love around. Again, thank you for listening.
As long as we're all working together, this is going to be fine. It's going to be great.
I need you to notify the families of everyone who died here today.
Totally. Wait, what?